quick background on this story if you're new to it. Admittedly, I am not a financial expert, but what I understand to have happened is this. You have this brick and mortar store, essentially, GameStop, right? You see them often in malls, for instance. You go in and buy video games, which has not been a great business model for the last, many years, actually, because a lot of people are online gaming. Same issue that Blockbuster had competing with Netflix and Amazon Prime. And so the stock for GameStop has been decreasing over time and was pretty low. And that caught the attention of short sellers, of people who essentially decided, you know what, we're going to bet against this company. So instead of the way that most people invest, which is, you buy stock in something you think is going to do really well, these folks are betting against a company they think is going to continue to tank and then make a lot of money off of them. Now, what ends up happening, though, is sort of what people have been calling a Reddit revolution. This Reddit thread essentially changed Wall Street history, or at least it has for now, because a bunch of people on it decided that as they were figuring out how much capital was tied up in betting against the existence of GameStop and its stock prices, that if they were to drive the stock prices back up, these traders would lose a ton of money. And that's essentially what happened. They took the stocks from a couple dollars to now a couple $100. And that threw everybody into a tizzy. There are a lot of people on the populist left and right that are cheering this on, basically saying, you know what? Let them game the system. Let the average person game the system for once, because the system has been gamed for a long time. One of the responses, though, that I've really been scratching my head over, and frankly is the point of my video, because I do media analysis, not stock market analysis. Again, not a stock market expert, so I'm sorry if I butchered some of the terminology in what I just explained. It's articles like this. This one, CNN Politics, How Trumpism Explains the GameStop Stock Surge, by Chris Cillizza, CNN editor-at-large, if I'm saying his name correctly. He starts off by saying, at the core of Donald Trump's angry populist appeal was and is this sentiment. The elites think they know better than you. They think they can tell you how to live and what to believe. But guess what? We, the people, are smarter than the elites. And you scroll down, what made Trump's argument so potent, politically speaking, is that he wasn't just calling out the elites. He was saying that average Joes needed to rise up and actually show them how wrong they were. That voting for him was the best way to express their anger and frustration with the condescension of their alleged betters. Donald Trump offered himself up as a collective middle finger to the elites, and he won. Now, he goes through the whole GameStop phenomenon, the, what happened, which I tried to sum up as best I could at the beginning of this video. And this is essentially how he ends it. There is his point. He says, the point is that there is no real point beyond showing up the pros, proving to them that they aren't as smart as they think they are and that they don't have the ability to control everything, which again has its roots in Trumpism. The entire notion of Trump's candidacy and presidency was to stick it to the elites. And then, there wasn't really a plan beyond that. The screw job was the point. That strategy, if that is even a word that can be associated with what this is, has massive limits. Sticking it to the man will only get you so far. It's not a solution to any problem. It's just a way to express frustration, anger, and a feeling of helplessness. Think of it this way. Giving someone the finger might make you feel good in the moment, but it doesn't solve anything. I'm going to address his point about the sticking it to the man phenomenon and, frankly, how our family has made choices, lifestyle choices really, to actually remove ourselves from the game instead of just trying to play it differently. But I'll get to that in a second. Really, what I want to talk about here is that if you're somebody who thinks that the idea of deep frustration and helplessness, as he describes it, with Wall Street erupted under Trump, perhaps, unlike me, you did not interview people who lost their homes with the housing crisis that began in 2008. Now, I was a brand new reporter in 2007. I got my first job in Macon, Georgia at the end of 2007 in the wintertime. By 2008, I had moved to Knoxville. And then basically a significant portion of my career for the next several years was in the middle of this subprime mortgage housing crisis. And all of the people who were left underwater on their mortgages and homeless because of this problem, watching the government then bail out the banks as they were struggling to feed their families. May I draw your attention to this article from the BBC, February 3rd, 2015. S&P to pay $1.4 billion to regulators in subprime debt case. Ratings agency Standard & Poor's has agreed to pay a $1.38 billion settlement to U.S. regulators over allegations it knowingly inflated its ratings of risky mortgage bonds. The deal with the U.S. Justice Department also resolves 19 other lawsuits. In a statement, McGraw-Hill, the parent company of S&P, said the settlement contains no findings of violations of law. S&P is the first credit agency fined over financial crisis era violations. The settlement covers mortgage bond ratings between 2004 and 2007. The bonds, which included subprime mortgages, were blamed for the collapse of the U.S. property market and subsequent global financial crisis. Anyway, it's all just to say that there's no way to make the case that this is a novel or even the most significant example of market manipulation that would then require a reaction that you're seeing from people shutting down social media platforms, trying to figure out how this can never happen again. Should there now finally be regulation from people who for years have said, no, no regulation, but in fact know that behind the scenes there's government and lobbyists and banks all kind of working in cahoots together. And most of us, we're just putting some of our income away in a 401k and hoping that we'll have a little bit to survive on through retirement, really not having any idea what's going on behind the scenes. I'm not denying that there are political undercurrents at play that are influencing what we're seeing here. Even the About Community section for WallStBets Reddit thread says, it's like 4chan found a Bloomberg terminal illness. But it is to say that, as I have referenced when it comes to repairing public trust with mainstream journalism, that if you are only looking at things that are happening right now and pinning them on one particular person or one particular political movement, then you're going to miss the entirety of the problem and thereby miss the solution. There's just no way to make the case that all of this and then on top of it, the movement to sort of screw the elites, that this all just arose as part of the MAGA movement, that this was just somehow Trump's call to action and people just woke up one day and were like, yeah, you're right, we're getting screwed. But it doesn't stop the publishing of articles like this from CNBC. Republicans in Washington warn Wall Street the GameStop populists are more powerful than you think. Watch out, Wall Street. They're coming for you, just like they came for us. So a couple of the key points they have here, there are scores of similarities between Donald Trump's Make America Great Again movement and the GameStop uprising. Republicans in Washington have a warning for Wall Street. Be willing to scrutinize yourself. This is not going away, and it is probably bigger than you think. And they have the former chief of staff for Mitch McConnell talking down kind of at the bottom here. Everybody, look what's going down, essentially trying to give the warning to Wall Street. This is what they say his message is. His warning to Wall Street is, understand this. Be willing to scrutinize yourself. This is not going away, and it is probably bigger than you think. People need to take the time to understand the social dynamics of this. What are the problems that have created this class of retail investor who seek to completely destroy your industry, and how do you remedy that? This is from... His last name is Holmes, Josh Holmes, former chief of staff for Senator Mitch McConnell. Now, I will agree with him that I would like to see institutions like the government or journalism, mainstream media, Wall Street, do some self-reflecting. Unfortunately, what I hear often is we need to figure out what these people got wrong about us so we can fix the messaging and pin it on a movement or a political figure so that if we just get rid of that we won't have these problems anymore, instead of really looking at how we got things wrong. Not that they got things wrong about us, but how we got things wrong. I mean, that's the thing I talk about with the enemy of the people stuff all the time. You see journalists regularly trying to, battle this, we're not the enemy of the people, we're not the enemy of the people, and you're wrong about us. Instead of taking a step back and be like, what did we get wrong that they see us this way? How can we do better in the future? If that's the kind of self-reflection we're talking about here, great. I'd love to see more of it. The other problem, too, with just pinning this on the MAGA movement is that you see people like AOC, for instance, coming out in support and saying, hey, you know what? Fine. There are people on the populist left and the populist right who are cheering on the Reddit revolution. So certainly people who are not fans of Trump and Trumpism and the MAGA movement still are unifying under the Reddit revolution, if that's what we're going to call it. So that's the other reason I don't think you can pin it on this. And I think it's disingenuous. And frankly, once again, drives the narrative in an increasingly, I'm not going to necessarily call it dangerous, because people, I feel like, use the word dangerous a lot. I even use it a lot, but just a very unhelpful place if what we want is reform and thinking through these problems in a way that moves us to a better place, instead of just, continuing to recycle the same problems and the same ineffective solutions, which just get us worse and worse and worse problems down the road. Now, to go back to the original CNN article that I showed you, where that guy was like, sticking it to the man only gets you so far. It's not a solution. All right, well, on a personal level, I will agree with him that just raging against people on a regular basis and just trying to get retribution, for instance, is probably not going to long-term change things. And frankly, this may end up, prompting the powers to lock down, sort of the democratization of all of this, this movement of speech and whatnot even more, because they're like, oh God, we didn't realize they could use social media for this too, which is another thing I talk about regularly on this channel. And that is, if you go back to the 16th century and you see how the translation of the Bible into the vernacular languages from Latin started and played a huge role in the revolutionary thoughts of that era that led to new governments and new ways of having society based on the fact that people were reading the Bible and saying, I don't think what this priestly class told us for the last hundreds, thousands of years is all correct. It doesn't say in here I have to pay $1,000 to get into heaven. Maybe I can read this for myself and decide what is actually true. And I've said before that I feel like we are in that new democratization of knowledge and of being able to read the truth, if you will. The priestly class is falling. People have the access to information in a way that they didn't before. In the same way, like I said, as somebody who has a Master of Divinity degree and studied the history of all of this stuff, it really reminds me a lot of the revolutions that occurred in the wake of people being able to read this text, this seminal text, the Bible, which before they had to trust other people to interpret for them. Now, that said, to go back again to my point of the sticking it to the man and whatnot, and this democratization, the revolutions, the thought revolutions that will come from this, which, like I've said, I don't know where this ends, but this is another example of it. What we decided to do, which I'm not sure is really sticking it to the man, it's actually saying to the man, bye, because we just left the city and we decided, you know what, we're going to move to an area where our economy is based on direct relationship with our neighbors as much as it possibly can. That's not to say I don't have a 401k. I do have a 401k. I hope my 401k is there at the end. And frankly, just to be honest and about, the conversation of financial experts and whatnot, we have people in our family who help invest retirement funds and estates and whatnot that help nonprofits, for instance, that do amazing work. Funds for hospitals that give patients money so that they can pay for hospital care and places to stay overnight when their family's sick. So this is not to say money bad, money bad, little guy good, right? It's no, we have a currency, we have an economy. There are people who are trying to do this the right way and are doing great things to help people with their little bit of income they have. I haven't made a ton of money over my adult life so far, but I have some savings, and we have put that from, my corporate news career, put that into a 401k and an IRA. And so hopefully that ends up working out well for us. But that's not our fail-safe. Our fail-safe is the relationships that we're building with the new lifestyle that we're creating by having left a city and living in the middle of nowhere where, Wall Street has no real control over how I buy food from the ranchers down the street. They have no control over the 14-year-old that comes over and plows our driveway. They have no control over the friend who makes clothes for our child. So we realize that besides the fact that we like living in the middle of nowhere because it's quiet and it's picturesque and we have more freedom, that exactly what we're talking about here, which is, can you change the system? Maybe, or you can just create your own. But the only way to do that is to start taking a look at your own lifestyle and saying, how can I short circuit the system? And that's essentially what we decided we're working towards by trying to build a family homestead and reduce the circumference of our economic activity so that it's closer to home. And the guy that, fixes our horses' feet when they need to be trimmed, the farrier, the ranchers we buy our food from, the guy who catches wild sockeye in Alaska, who we buy direct from, like I said, the 14-year-old who plows our street and our driveway area, all that, the people who make the clothes, like all these things that we can figure out how to say, you know what? This is our economy. This is our Wall Street, right? Main Street turned Wall Street, or Wall Street turned Main Street, if you will. So I leave that kind of as food for thought, because even though I think this CNN article is pretty smug and does nothing for journalists who are actually trying to repair our relationship with the public, because it takes no responsibility for our role in why people don't like the elites, I do think the guy makes a point, which is, what is your solution? What is your solution to this? And as an added bonus, when you decide, you know what, I'm going to start figuring out how to repair my block with my own neighbors and my local economy, you not only gain resilience financially, but you gain a lot of resilience relationally, because that divisiveness and that tribalism that is easily created by, corporate news, for instance, when we don't know each other personally, that goes away. The power starts to dissipate, because it's very hard to turn you against somebody as A, B, C, or D, shallow critiques that don't really fit, and poor understandings of nuance, which are often used, to continue dividing. It's very hard to succeed doing that when people actually know each other. The spell is broken. So I'd love to hear what you all think. Definitely leave me a comment in the comment section. And don't forget, like, share, make sure you're subscribed. Again, there are links in the description for how you can support my work, but head over to Locals too if you haven't done that. And there are a lot of great creators over there, but I'm there too. So in case something happens, and who knows, I'm hoping that things are going to work itself out on YouTube, but in the event that they don't, I am on Locals. I'm going to start uploading to other platforms. I'll let you know when those are live as well, and I will see you all next time.